I'm trying not to scream at anyone telling them the right way to parent or the right way to do this or that. I can tell you what is working for me and what isn't and what sucks and what's challenging, but no one really has there's no one size fits all for any of this stuff or any of these things we're talking about. And they're all like, there's no real answer. Life is a struggle. Life is really hard. And you're just trying to get like 1% better at doing it every single day. And so I'm glad that comes across and that you felt that. And it's really, it's been core to how I've thought about it all on the way.
Hello and welcome back to OK Sister Podcast. My name is Mads.
My name is Scout. Oh my God. What do we say?
What do we say, guys? Sisters. We
6 years later.
6 years later.
Almost 400 episodes later.
We have had our first male guest on the pod.
And we are all out of sorts about it.
We're all out of sorts, but we also wouldn't have wanted any other man to grace us with his presence and his wisdom. And that man is no other than Sahil Bloom.
If you are an OG sister, you have heard us speak about Sahil's work, his content, his newsletters.
I introduced you to him, right?
You introduced me to him. Yeah, which is really
like,
crazy.
This guy is your vibe. It's crazy because he's both of our vibes.
He's both of our vibes put together.
I
agree.
And I have been a religious reader of his newsletter for years now. He is such an approachable and tactical, but also just like gentle.
He's very embodied. He's very embodied.
Totally.
Yeah, and it's really hard to find men in
the self-development space.
And honestly, just like men in general across any industry that are as embodied and intentional as Sahil is. And I think that's why we both resonate so much with his work.
Yeah, so I kind of I slid into the DMs.
Whoa.
And I was just like, yo,
can you come on?
Will you be the first male guest on our pod? And he was like, what?
He's like, me?
He was like, are you sure? He was like, I'm honored. So he was in LA and came on the pod, and this conversation, get your fucking notebook out.
Yes.
You're going to want to take
Holy
notes.
shit. I feel like I was like, you're in my presence. I'm going to fire so many fucking questions at you.
We went all over the place because we wanted to capture as much wisdom in 1 hour, but we're going to have to do a part two.
Let's
100%.
put it this way. Sahil's coming back to the podcast. We've already discussed it. He will be doing a part two eventually on this pod. But yeah, I'm so interested, sisters, to hear how you liked us chatting with a man.
A man in the sacred sisterhood.
And if you want more men on the podcast, let us know in the DMs. DM us at OK Sister
Yeah, we talk so much about fatherhood.
Yeah.
Just because he's a new dad, you're a new mom, and I love his approach to fatherhood. I love his philosophies. So we chatted about that. We chatted about productivity. We chatted about business and getting nitty gritty about certain business models, and it went everywhere. And
we talk about relationships. We talk about siblings.
At the end, he rattles off micro things that you can implement literally tomorrow.
Yeah.
That will improve your life. Those are going to be incredible. So definitely listen till the end. Oh.
Yeah.
Just full body breath.
What the fuck? What the fuck? So articulate. We have literally recorded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 podcast episodes in the last 2 days. So
2 days.
This is it for us.
No, but this was a dream get for us. A dream guest.
Yeah.
Someone that
we had to pinch ourselves
so long. He's just at the top of his game, and it was really awesome.
And we were nervous because it was a man, so there was some nerves. Not gonna lie, we were oh, how does this work?
No, but it was fantastic.
It was really good.
The best.
I don't listen to I listen to some of our podcasts. I go in phases. Sometimes I'll listen every single week.
This one I'll be listening.
This one I will 100%.
Oh, no, this one is you listen and you take notes.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Ooh, this is gonna be a good one.
With that, sisters, let's welcome Sahil Bloom to OK Sister Podcast.
Although he sleeps with us. We have
you caved.
We caved 2 weeks. We had the snoo, we did all the fancy stuff, whatever.
He's been sleeping with you guys the whole time.
Yeah. And then we just started liking it, and so then I was just oh, this is awesome.
What time do you go to bed?
I go to bed at 7:30. I go to sleep at 8:15,
so
8:30.
You have to, because she goes to bed at 8, so I'd have to be in bed.
Yeah,
with
my
her.
wife gets in bed with him at probably 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know. I go back and forth because we took
And then
Lily.
but he sleeps like 12 straight hours when it's like that versus and now he sleeps like in between. It's just like a little kid sleeping there, because he's like a little toddler. Originally it was like, he's breastfeeding the whole night and just and it was just the only way that he would sleep. And so my wife, it was like, this is the only way that she's getting any sleep, and so it made sense.
Yeah, see, my girl's been sleeping through the night in a crib since 4 months.
That's amazing.
12 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why fuck with that?
Yeah, totally.
But we went to Malibu, her, me, and my daughter, and she wouldn't sleep in the crib because she saw me in the room. So I put her in between us, and I was like,
oh my God, it was
I woke up in the middle of the night, and I saw her sleeping next to me.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I get why parents co-sleep.
It's my favorite thing in the world. I love it.
It is like, we're going to Tulum, and I'm so excited. Like, my new rule is that when we travel, Lily gets to sleep in bed with me.
Yeah.
I can't do it at home, or else I'll go fucking
good.
batshit insane. But
I love it. It's definitely like my hottest parenting take, because it's one of those things that like everyone tells you, oh, you're not supposed to do that. You got to, and by the way, all of that is like this Western culture bullshit that has gotten pushed on you that you're supposed to do. Because if you go to like the vast majority of international cultures, co-sleeping is totally normal. And like the idea that you have to take your kid and like put them into a separate room and have them sleep is like, why do you need your kid to be independent at like,
well,
2
that's
months
kind of
old?
what you were talking
If it
about.
works for you, great. But if it doesn't work
Yeah.
for you, like, why are you yelling at me that I need to do something?
totally. For me, I need
Yeah.
the space.
Yeah. And I get that. When I see my wife and how little space she has from him, I'm like, you are a saint. I have no idea how you're doing this, because it would drive me nuts.
Yeah, for me personally, I have learned, especially as a woman, to be very, and it's hard because I think women deal with a little bit more guilt than men might. I have learned to just not even second guess the things that work for me because I can't. Because if I go down a rabbit hole of it should do this, or another culture does this, or our culture, it's like what works for me as a mom who has businesses, who's all this stuff. I'm like, that's what it's gonna be, and that's it.
And
but
that's
it's
it.
so easy
Preach.
to go insane
Yeah.
with your head. It's so easy to go insane.
Especially in the like content era that we live in, when you're constantly, if you're a
yeah.
mom, your entire Instagram feed is mommy gurus telling you like how you're supposed to be a mom, and that you're like damaging your child permanently by doing X, Y, or Z.
Oh, yeah.
And you're giving them this food. Okay, well, they happen to like it, and it's the only thing they would eat. So like, they need to eat something. They can't, like, no, I can't give my kid grass-fed beef 8 times a day. Like, just because that's the healthiest thing. I have to give them what they're gonna eat.
Yeah.
And like, I ate freaking Cheerios when I was a kid, and I'm perfectly healthy and fine.
I have my main priorities,
Yeah.
right? Like, I will not let a diaper company shame me because they have a fucking chemical in their diaper and it's going to fuck my kid up, okay? My priority is emotional...
Are we recording this, by the way?
we're
Because this is good.
Oh, we're going.
Emotional stability and emotional health, right? Emotional intelligence, and all of that is my priority. So childcare with quality people who can be with my daughter and be really present and loving is way more important to me. Quality food is then the second thing. And then if there is time, money, and resources for anything else, it can go there. But I'm like, those are my priorities, and the diapers are like down there for me. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, it's like you have, it's like the Mark Manson thing of like, you only have so many fucks you can give.
Yes.
So you have to like choose the couple of fucks.
Yes.
And then like everything else is just below your line, and you're like, I can't deal with it.
Yes.
I totally agree. That's just like, I mean, our fundamental thing has always been making sure that our son knows that he's loved and supported.
Yeah.
And if anything else goes to shit below that, but he knows that he's cared for and loved and supported, then like, you as a kid know you can thrive if you know that you are loved and supported. I've talked about this in the context of my own relationship with my dad, that the thing that I felt like he did better than anyone in the world was that he combined really high expectations with really high support. And I think it's the two in tandem that's really powerful, because high expectations without high support is dangerous, because then you're like, oh, the person expects me to do X, Y, and Z and to achieve all these things, but there's no support to back it up. That's really hard on a kid.
Yeah.
But with the support, so like they have high expectations for me, but they're also putting me on their shoulders and lifting me up to go and achieve those things.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing combination. And so like, as I've thought about being a father, that's really been what I've tried to strive towards, is like, how can I pair those two things and make sure my son knows that.
It seems like people get too in the weeds of the like micro random like strategies, like just overarching. If you're supporting your child, and because yes, it's a very imprintable age that they're at. So I get that you guys are
Lily has a good life. That's like when
she's
truly,
loved.
She's fine.
but truly, like when I have really, really challenging moments where it's like I'm brought to my knees, I'm stressed, I'm this, I'm that, I'm not my best. I just cry with pride to know that even if this is happening to me and I feel this way in my life, whether it's business challenges or whatever I'm going through, I am giving my daughter a really good life. And at the end of the day, that is the only thing that really matters.
Totally.
All of the little stuff you can just kind of let go, you know?
Yeah.
Question about expectations. And then we'll get into the
And
other
then we'll
things
get
of it.
into it.
I find I catch myself, and this is something that I'm really trying to adamantly, work on in parenthood, is that my husband and I will sit around and we'll be like, oh, maybe we should put her in gymnastics, or maybe she'd be great as a dancer, or maybe she should be an athlete. And it's expectations of who you want your child to be versus at the end of those conversations, I always end with, and Lily will tell us who she wants to be, but it's so hard to not envision a whole life for your kid and know that they're not going to live any fucking part of that, most likely, right? They're going to do their own thing. That is so hard.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's funny. So my background, I'm half Indian. So my mom is like born and raised in India, immigrated to the US for college. My dad is white, Jewish from the Bronx. And
Yeah,
What?
Yeah.
Sahil?
Sahil,
We didn't know you're Jewish.
Oh yeah,
We
part of the
didn't know
tribe.
this. We didn't know this part of your brand.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The interview's going in a different area.
And my dad, my dad's from a Ukrainian Jewish family, like Ashkenazi
Wow.
Jews. Yeah. So the funny juxtaposition of the two cultures has been really prominent in the whole expectations thing, because Indian culture, it's like super tough, wanting you to be a doctor or a lawyer or McKinsey consultant or whatever. Like the expectations are very cultural and social driven, where it's like you need to have an impressive sounding thing so that the rest of the village thinks you're impressive. And
Wait, that didn't happen on the Jewish side for you?
not as much. I mean, my dad, so the longer story with my dad and our relationship and how he's been as a father is when he wanted to marry my mom, his family didn't accept it. And he had a rather abusive father, emotionally more than physically, who basically told him he had to choose between my mom and them. And he walked out the door and never saw them again. So I never met either my dad's parents. My dad has 4 siblings I've never met.
Wow.
And as a result, that made my dad, I think, flip a switch to just being ultra supportive mode. Whatever my sister and I wanted to do, he was going to be there cheering us on in the front row. To this day, and Matt, who's here, can attest, I went to India and did a bunch of live events recently, and my dad was literally sitting in the front row at all these events with a notebook, taking notes on my talks that I was giving, and then giving me feedback later on the way you said this was great. You could have hit this a little harder. That was the level of support I always felt from him. My mom has always had super high expectations, but it took her longer to come around to the idea that both my sister and I were going to be our own person, and that we weren't going to be the doctor. Neither one of us is a doctor. We didn't have interest in that. And she was unbelievably loving and supportive throughout, but the hardwired, ingrained wanting your kid to be a Rhodes Scholar because they're capable of that was harder for her to crack, I would say.
That's interesting. We grew up, our culture, we grew up in a very isolated, not isolated, but very strong Jewish community. And I feel as if me more so than Mads had to crack through that expectation.
Older sibling.
Older sibling.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, but I was just a little more non-traditional than Mads was.
Yeah. Okay, wait, you said that you have a story about your sister.
Wait, before we get into this,
sorry.
can we just acknowledge that there's a man
welcome to
in the
Okay Sister
room?
Podcast. Sahil, you're the first male guest on
The
Okay
nerves
Sister
that
Podcast.
we have been feeling. One, we're a huge fan of yours.
We're
Your
a
name has
huge
come up on
fan.
this podcast so many times over the
man.
last 2 years. We're almost at 400 episodes, and we had our partners on ones, but we haven't interviewed a man before, so I think we're doing a good job so far.
Yeah, it'll be a different energy.
Yeah. I mean, when I got the message from you guys and you said that, I was like, I'm really honored, but honestly terrified at the same time. I'm like, I don't know if I'm coming on and it's it's going to be a bloodbath. I don't know what to expect here. So no, but seriously, I'm really excited. This is awesome.
Yeah. I the reason we have only interviewed women is because, I don't know, from our perspective, we are champions of women. We bring them up and we want to give women platforms to speak. And I've always struggled with male
I was gonna say, I think it's a little more deep rooted for me.
Male like content on the internet, if that makes sense.
Say more.
Oh yes, let's go.
Yeah, I haven't felt like it speaks to me because it feels hyper masculine. It feels extremely devoid of emotion, or I don't know. There is this like disconnect or like this broiness that I feel a lot from like male creators, except for you. And then I found you.
I'm glad to hear
and
that.
someone else.
And Ed My Love,
And
we
Ed
love.
My
And
Love.
we love Jay
cool.
Shetty. So we obviously there are men that speak to us, but I don't know. I don't even know how I discovered you, but a lot of, the productivity hacker type of content, it felt just like people screaming at me and telling me like what I'm doing wrong. And with you approach it with this, like, I wouldn't say spirituality, but there is a level of that where it's logical and it's very tactical, but it's inspiring and empowering at the same time. Do you feel that from you?
I also feel like the way your brain works, specifically why she resonated with your work. Also, in the time that she found your work, we were in a personal development exploration, and I had my own people I listened to, and she found your work. And I feel like your brain and the way you communicate is very similar to your fiance's.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I feel like that's
where
true.
it's like logical, but it's still empathetic.
Yeah, the way I always think about it, which is how I would phrase, I think what you're saying is, I think most of like male content creation is about, hey, I know all the answers, and I'm gonna just like tell you all the answers. And hey, by the way, buy my course where I teach you this for $500 a month.
Totally.
And A, I don't have a course to sell you, so there's nothing for me to actually sell on the back end. But B, my whole thing from the get-go has been, I don't have any of the answers. I'm 33 years old. I haven't lived 90 years of wisdom. I haven't done 8 million different things. What I have done is thought really deeply every single day about the right questions to ask. And as I think about my own content, what I'm trying to get across is like, I can't give you the answers, but what I can give you is the questions you should be asking so that you can come to the better answers for your life and the things that are going to fit and help you, and share the ideas that I'm wrestling with on an ongoing basis that can hopefully help you come to your own solutions. And I think that's what has resonated with people over the last few years that I've been doing this, is just like, I'm trying not to scream at anyone telling them the right way to parent or the right way to do this or that. I can tell you what is working for me and what isn't, and what sucks and what's challenging. But no one really has there's no one size fits all for any of this stuff or any of these things we're talking about. And they're all like, there's no real answer. Life is a struggle. Life is really hard. And you're just trying to get like 1% better at doing it every single day. And so I'm glad that comes across and that you felt that. And it's really, it's been core to how I've thought about it all along the way.
Along the way, you're like, all along the way. This has been 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Which is really like a blip in time for you. Mads and I have seen people come and go and seen how long it can take someone to build a platform to the level at which you have. 2.5 years, 3 years is like nothing in this space. Has it felt like a rocket ship for you, or has it been quite grounding?
No, I constantly feel like I'm not doing enough and that I should be doing more. You guys, I'm sure both feel this, that like it's the perils of being ambitious as a human being, is that no matter what you're achieving, you're constantly feeling like you're not doing enough and that you should be doing more, and you're seeing people that are doing more. And for me, like, since I've become a dad, there's tons of trade-offs and sacrifices that you make for your most important thing in the world, which is now your child in your case, and it certainly is in my case. And that means certain things. Like when I see creators who are like rocket ships, doing a million different things, launching tens, companies left and right, I could go do that, but it would literally mean me not having a relationship with my son, which is a trade-off that I am not willing to make in a million years. And so I don't know. I battle like the different sides of me, because I have the psychopath, put my head down from my like baseball days, just the like discipline bug where I could just go do something and go dark. You wouldn't see me for a year, and it might change my entire life or something on the back end. But then I also have the side of me that's like, I want to be able to go in the pool at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday with my son. And I feel like the wealthiest man in the world when I get to do that. I don't need $1 more to get to do that, and I can do that today. And so those two sides of me, and like wrestling with that tension and the collision of it, is that's really been the experience of the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Oh God, that frustration, it like eats at me all the time. And when you have a kid, it just gets worse and worse and worse because you want to express yourself fully and do the things that light you up and feed your ambition monster or friend, whatever you want to call it. But there is a wild reconfiguring of priorities when it comes to your time, when it comes to having a kid.
Yeah, and I mean, the way I've always wrestled with this, which may or may not be helpful for people, is that anything in the world that you want to teach your kid, you can't teach it to them by saying it.
Yeah.
You teach it to them by embodying it yourself. And so if I want my son to work hard on things he cares about, that he finds purpose and meaning around, the only way that I can get that across to him is by doing it myself and for him to see me living that way. And it's the same thing for how I treat my wife. I've said this before. Like, if I want my son to treat my wife like a queen, then I have to treat my wife like a queen every single day. If I want him to learn delayed gratification, I have to delay gratification. And he has to see that through how I'm living. And I think about that every day. Like, when I'm working hard, I want him to see that. And as he starts to get older, I want to be able to explain to him why I'm working hard on these things, why it matters to me, why I care about them, why I think it's creating an impact on people out there, and why that matters to me versus what I was doing before, which was just chasing this like fairy dust thing of money and trying to make money at all costs.
Yeah.
And I think that has always helped me, just having that justification in my own mind of like, he needs to see this. It's really important for his own formation of his life.
Yeah, Ed Milet said this, but I think it's a Carl Jung quote potentially, but do not quote me on
Everything is like Mark Twain, Carl
It's,
Jung, Aristotle.
it's
There's
some-
no such thing as a quote.
It's something.
Yeah.
And it hit me so hard when I was pregnant because I'm a really ambitious person. I love working. I have my businesses. It's not something that I'm going to put a stop on. And I was like, how am I going to be a mom and be with my child all this time while also doing me? And he said one of the biggest forms of betrayal a parent can do is essentially not live up to their fullest potential, because there is no way I can look in my daughter's eyes and say, you can be, do, and become whoever you want to be if
you're
I'm not being, doing, and becoming whoever I want to be. And so that's the quote I keep coming back to, because I never want her to feel burdened by my unlived dreams because I became a mom.
So good.
Yeah.
It hits so hard. It's also something my wife and I wrestled with a lot when we were going to have Roman a couple of years ago. Was, my wife is amazing, superstar designer. So she was running men's design at Gap, crushing it career-wise, like on the fast track to be one of the like senior people at, this big company. And what she really felt called to was being a mom. And there was this battle with the external perception of that, of like, oh, you're just going to be a mom, quote unquote. And her concern that she was no longer going to sound impressive externally, and how to wrestle with that. And one thing that always helped and kept coming up for us was life has these seasons. And what you focus on in any one season can change. So you can have a season of being a mom and being there for that like 2 to 3 year period that's so formative for your kid, and not need to feel that stress of like, well, my whole career is gone. It's never going to come back. Yeah, and I'm never going to be able to do that again, because you can just be in this season, like ride that wave. And then in the next season, it may change. Your kid might be in school and you have more time on your hands, and you can start to, revive and find that like new purpose in a new career or in the same one you were in. And that was like really, really inspiring, enlightening for us when we kind of came to that, rationale around all of it.
Before Mady asked that question, I'm so sorry. Your wife's staying home with your kid is living her fullest potential.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like, that's the point of that quote, is like, whatever your fullest potential is, you have to live that. So if she went back to work and felt so called, she would be doing her child and herself a disservice, and she's abandoning herself. And the whole point is for us to not abandon ourselves, but to do the thing that we know is right for us in the season that we are in.
And for you to define what your fullest potential is, and not allow other people to tell you what your fullest potential is, because that's the risk we all run, is that it's just mimesis, and you're like, okay, my fullest potential is working because that's what society wants me to do, is like to have a cool career and to sound impressive at cocktail parties so that I can, schmooze with people. When what I'm really called to is to be a mother or to be a father in this period of my life, whatever the thing is. it's like, you know, it's living by design, not by default.
So what season are you in?
That's a good question. I would say my season is going to be pretty consistent over the next 15, 20 years of my life, if I were to guess. And I'd call it my season of creating ripples. How I think about everything that I do now is that my entire goal is to create as many and as strong as possible of ripples in the world, positive ripples in the world. And I think I do that right now through content that's created and through ideas that are shared and hopefully amplified by other people out there that become kind of beacons for those ideas. And I think that I get paid basically on the basis of the number and strength of ripples that I can create. And it's not via a course that I'm selling, but the ideas being shared creates an ecosystem that I can then, that I can build on the back end of that. And so I think of ripples as being tiny in the context of like local, like my family, my son, my wife, our relationship, my relationship with my parents really thriving. Like those are ripples that I'm creating. Being able to share that amplifies those, and that's reaching more people and inspiring more people to do the same. And then it's the big reach, right? Like you're putting things out into the world that hopefully we go to India and there's kids that are, have read things and they've changed one tiny thing about their life as a result of something that I wrote from my desk. Like what a crazy world we live in that you're able to do that. So that's really how I'm thinking about it. It's like creating as many ripples, small and large, local, global, wherever they are.
I love that.
Can I ask a more logistical question?
Please.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
Now get down to brass tacks.
Just wondering, as a businesswoman that I am, I listened to you on Jasmine Star's podcast.
She's great.
All the things you said were amazing. And I'm like, I need you to map out your businesses for me. I want to know how you make money. I really do, because you have a really, what's the word?
Eclectic?
Effortless way of talking about it. And I'm like, okay, so you do the content. I know you have a couple agencies on the back end, but kind of like map out how your businesses work.
Yeah. That's a nice way of saying it, effortless. It also could just be like sound like a fugazi. And you like, what are you doing back there? So there's a few things. I mean, the media business itself is all of my kind of like channels that go out that you see. None of those are really monetized directly. Obviously, like some of the platforms make a little bit of money, but the main thing that's monetized from a business standpoint on the media side is my newsletter, which just has sponsorships. And, the newsletter now reaches about 800,000 people twice a week. And so the sponsorships are actually, like a brand will pay $10,000 for one of those sends. And if you're sending it 10 times a month, like it's not hard math to do that. There's a good business there. I reinvest the vast majority of that into growing the newsletter to reach more people. So it's not like I'm just taking dollars and like, I'm not like coming in here like money bags from a newsletter. But it's a good business that exists there. Then there's kind of two separate things outside of the media business. And by the way, the media business will have other things in the future that kind of branch off that, eventually a book and, other stuff that'll come. Outside the media business, there's kind of two pieces. There's my venture fund that I run. So I have
That's right.
$10 million venture fund. There's no like near-term cash flow from that because I don't charge fees. It's all like longer-term investments, carried interest in the fund. And then the holding company, which is really the bulk of this. And that is anywhere from like 20 to 100% ownership in, I don't know, it's something like 10 businesses today that all independently generate cash flow and all independently have people running them. So I'm not actually involved in the like day-to-day nitty-gritty operations as CEO of any of those. I am effectively like chief business development officer or like chief strategy officer of them, in that I use my platform to drive eyeballs to those businesses. So examples there would be like the agencies you mentioned. I own a newsletter growth agency. So it was the team that was helping with my newsletter growth that we then productized that. And now they service the newsletters of some of the largest creators in the world. That's, a monthly like high ticket services business.
And you get a percentage of that.
I own a big chunk of that business. So it has a CEO that runs it,
so
and
you
I just
profits at the end of the day.
every month we just distribute out profits from the business. Because a business like that will run that one runs at probably about a 50% profit margin. So if we're charging clients anywhere from $4,000 to $15,000 a month, depending on what they need. You just don't need that many clients in a business like that for it to be distributing a pretty meaningful monthly check to the owners.
I don't want to hog the. I don't want to.
No, I know because so why Scout's asking this is because we've been trying to figure out ways to innovate, even in the podcasting space. People come to us all the time, as people came to you, like, how do I start a newsletter? How do I make content? Whatever. And you have been able to transfer that to, I'm going to own this business and do this for other clients, but take myself out of it because we cannot do the operations of those types of things. So we were thinking from a podcasting standpoint, how do we, field all the questions we get about starting a podcast? How do we do that in a way where we're not in the nitty gritty day to day, but there is like an ownership and is that a network? Is that like what?
And not just that, I own an agency, and hearing you talk, I want to die on the floor because you're like, I just own them. I'm like, fuck me. How do I get to just own my agency? Like that leap, what you are talking about right now, I think you talk about it on podcasts, and I think it might go over some people's head because you have to really like own a business and be an operator and put your blood, sweat, and tears into something to realize that leap from CEO-ship, like even what Mady and I are talking about, taking that model and doing something here, it is hard.
It's very
It is hard to go from launching and running a business to being the owner. And that gap is impressive that you've been able to create. And that's why I'm so interested in talking to you about these things, because maybe it doesn't come easy to me and Mady. I don't know. Like, you could speak for yourself. Maybe I'm too emotional. Maybe I'm too involved. Maybe I'm too afraid to let go of the reins, etc. But what you're talking about, one, is not spoken about. No one talks about this. And two, for entrepreneurs who have been in the game for 5 years, that's their fucking dream. What you have is the dream. And I'm trying to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I
start a business around it, and I'll be your client.
Yeah. There's kind of like two mental models, if you will, that I think are kind of helpful. So the first one that I thought about a lot when I was starting on the creator journey a few years ago was like Amazon and what they did with their web services business.
Yes.
And so the whole idea was like Amazon was spending tons of money on all of this like server and compute power to run their e-commerce business. And so they had to build up this like enormous server stack in order to fuel the e-commerce business that was on what people knew about Amazon. And what they realized was that was actually equally, if not more valuable. And there were tons of startups and businesses that would pay to have access to that stack because they needed it to run their growing businesses. And so they started renting out the thing that they had built, and they turned a cost center into a profit center. And I wanted to take a similar approach on a much, much tinier scale of like, what am I spending money on every single month as a creator or as a business person? And how can I turn that into something that is now a profit center for me rather than something I'm spending money on? So the newsletter one's a perfect example of that. I was paying this team every single month to run the back end of my newsletter because I just wanted to write the damn newsletter. All I wanted to do was write and think. And I didn't want to worry about growth funnels and, marketing and sponsorships and like ads, all of these other things. And so I paid someone to do that. What I realized was I'm not alone in needing that skill set, needing that thing to be done. And so because I had paid this person, and this leads me to my second idea, which is being client zero of a company is a really powerful way to test this out, because I was client zero of that newsletter company. I was just working with the guy. I got to know him really well as a result of working with him. And then I trusted him. I knew the quality of the service he was going to deliver was really, really good. So launching the business with him was a really easy step because I knew exactly what the customers were then going to get. No capital up front. You don't have to like pay
for people, because that's like Mads and I could do something like this, right? But I'm like, you and I would be doing the thing that's adding more work. Right. Like, we're trying to hack a world where we're not putting in more work to make more money, but we don't have the capital to bring something up. So that's what I was wondering, how that how that balance happens.
Yeah, and a lot of these, I mean, an agency business like that is usually cash collected up front, and then you deliver the service for the month. And now it's expanded. Like the newsletter one is one example, but now, another example of something like this was I was paying video editors to edit different clips for me. I was paying copy, designers, like people for all these different areas of my business, and I was hiring them and finding them is a pain. Getting them, like managing benefits and payroll and how you pay them, especially if they're overseas, it's really hard. And so we launched a business to do that, to place creative talent into growing businesses. And like, again, that's a great business because you either get a placement fee up front or you get an ongoing recurring embedded talent fee that the companies are paying you. So there's just like the biggest principle to all of this, by the way, is when I worked in finance, which was the first 7 years of my career, I basically had this impression that the only way to make money was to work in like professional services. I was like, you have to either be a lawyer, a doctor, a consultant, a banker. Like you just have to do one of these like stable tracks if you want to make a good living. And then I started to realize when I became more of an entrepreneur that there's basically infinite ways to make money. You just kind of have to open your eyes to it and like do one sort of well. You don't even have to be the best person. Like you don't have to be the Amazon or the Facebook or like the Snapchat or whatever the fancy company is. You just have to deliver a service that people need a little bit better than they're currently getting it. And if you can do that, you can build a great life around it.
Yeah.
We'll chat.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm more than happy to chat more about this, like separate and apart from this discussion.
We need to.
Because
I
I think
just
it's
want to
interesting.
compliment you and say that
I appreciate it.
That dynamic that you have is very rare, and I'm trying to step into that mindset shift and that day-to-day operational shift within my own businesses.
Okay, I want to go back. Let's shift.
Oh yeah.
I want to go back to the story.
Let's Mady talk. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Go,
No,
Mads.
you're fine.
Shine.
No, this is great. Okay, you have a story to tell us about your sister.
Oh yeah,
And
you're on the OK Sister podcast.
We're on
I
the
feel
OK
this is
Sister
a great way to talk
podcast.
about it.
We
Yeah.
need to talk about your sister. What?
Yeah, so I have one sibling, older sister, similar age gap to you two, about 3.5 years. And your dynamic actually reminded me of it when you were saying like, you were breaking the mold and just like the relationship with parents and the dynamic there. My sister was like the golden child. And straight A's, like exactly what my mom wanted in a firstborn child, I think, in a lot of ways. Like got the best, highest GPA in my high school's history, got into every single college that she applied to, a physics major at Yale in college, just like unbelievably high achieving, like beautiful, always like, well put together, presented extremely well, just like everything. And I, as I was growing up, was the like ne'er-do-well kind of shithead younger brother who just wanted to play baseball. And, there's like a competitive tension among siblings, especially growing up, where because I didn't feel like I was as capable as her academically, I sort of like felt like there was a resentment that got created between us where I kind of resented the success she was having and that she was achieving all of these things that made my parents so proud, and that like I didn't feel through my own insecurity that I was capable of that. And as a result, for the vast majority of our lives, we were sort of in slightly different stages and we were never close. We always had this like tension in our relationship between us. And then everything changed when my son was born. And in a lot of ways, I feel like after 30 years of living with someone, my sister and I met for the first time.
Wow.
And it's so interesting to think about today. And I've talked to her about this. We've had like deep conversations about it now, that it was the first time in our lives where I felt like we could see each other, that we both had she has a son as well, who's about a year older than my son. And we were in the same stage of life, and there was no more like nonsense, bullshit, competitive tension between us. All of that had been scrubbed away, and we were just able to see each other. And there was so much beauty in it, and it makes my parents so proud and so happy to see now that like if they're gone, they know that my sister and I have this connection and have this bond that has come together at this stage of our life. But it, to me, was just a reminder that your relationship with people changes across these seasons of your life. And there are people who you have not had a relationship with, or it's been tense, or it's been competitive or not good. And then suddenly, for some reason, something will click. And in a season of your life when you need them most, everything kind of comes together at the right moment, at the right time. And it's just been such a beautiful, just in the last year and a half, 2 years, to just see our relationship really come together and have that feeling that for the first time in our lives, we're meeting and having this new relationship.
We talk about this all the time about like it's just us.
Yeah.
Like when we grow up and when we were growing up, it was our dad with his brothers. Like they were running the family. Like yes, our grandparents were there, but like they run the family now. And it's weird to think that we're going to be that when we grow up. And so that's so beautiful that you were able to reconnect.
I remember our nanny sitting, I don't know if you remember, but she sat me down. I think we were fighting at a really young age. And she looked at me and she was mad. I was like in a corner and she was angry at me. And she said, "It's you and your sister for the rest of your life."
Yeah.
For the rest of your life. And when I had a kid, I really realized it, because I'm not speaking about my husband and I. We will be together till the ends of earth. But statistically speaking, in this world, marriages can leave, relationships can break up.
Yeah,
but the two things that you
siblings.
and your parents pass on, technically the two things that you cannot distance yourself from are your children and your siblings. Those two are a type of biological forever that is one of the most sacred relationships.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did not, well, you're welcome. I was not his older sister, and I totally fucked everything up. And I was not, like, you didn't have to live up to anything.
I know, I was going to say this.
You didn't have to live up to shit.
I know, when you were telling the story, I was like, I wish I could say the same, but she was the one that...
Say our dynamic.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Yeah, so Scout, well, growing up, I always looked up to Scout, but Scout grew up with bipolar disorder. Well, she still has bipolar disorder, but her mental health was always like very amplified growing up, whereas my mental health kind of took a back seat. I was always the happy one, the energetic one. I presented that way. So my parents didn't really...
Straight A's. Very academic. I was ditching school.
Yeah, yeah. So it was kind of like she was in this darkness and I was more this lightness in a way.
Yeah.
She also was just very non-traditional, went to tons of colleges, dropped
5.
out. Who's counting?
Dropped out twice. Never finished.
But
And now you're here.
Yeah,
and now we're here. And so,
But
honestly,
she was like that, like straight A,
Yeah.
like
That's
USC.
so it was kind of reversed.
Yeah.
But the thing that brought us together was this podcast.
Yeah.
And like we always spoke and we always were close, but it wasn't, and we handled things so differently. Like our parents' divorce, we processed them so differently. But then coming together on this podcast, it's like, it's kind of the moment you were saying where it was like everything clicked and you're like, oh shit, like this is my person.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It is like the sibling relationship in that way. I mean, once I realized it, and I realized that like it was really my own, it was nothing my sister did. It was my own insecurity that I was manifesting out into the world. And by the way, every big mistake I've ever made in my entire life has been driven by my own insecurity.
Yeah.
And that was like for 30 years of my life that I just didn't know who I was yet. And I didn't know what my purpose was and why I was focusing on certain things. I was just chasing some external definition of success that I was defaulting into. And that led to a whole lot of insecurity that I like pushed out into the world in different ways. And my relationship with my sister not being what it should have been was really just a byproduct of that. And so the first step to all of this was me actually saying something to her about that and just telling her like, I'm so glad that we're in this new phase of our life, like almost like reconciling, and we never fought. There was never like some big blow up or anything. It was just like, it was one of those relationships of like, there's just nothing, right? Like it's almost, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like an underlying tension that you don't ever talk about. There's no fight, no blow up. But I needed to step up and say something about it in order to move forward. And so being able to do that was like really challenging for me, frankly, because you have to look at yourself in the mirror about your own insecurities in that way. But I'm so glad that I did.
Yeah. A lot of it is also the stories we make up in our heads. Like I remember there was kind of that distance between me and my dad, and last year I wrote him a letter and I didn't even know like what to write because I was like, I don't even know how to express what's going on. But I wrote this letter and we got on a call and we kind of like pinpointed certain memories in our life and things that at least I held on, but I didn't think it was, appropriate to speak to him about it. We both remembered them so differently. And I was like, you talked to me in this way. And he was like, what? Like you talk, it was so illuminating. And so now I've made this promise to myself that yes, confrontation is hard, like, but it is so much more rewarding when you communicate those things. Like, holy shit. Like, the person is not a mind reader. And a lot of it is just how you're processing. And as you said, the insecurities, you're making up these stories. And it literally might not even be true.
When you avoid a hard conversation, you are taking on a debt that has to be repaid with interest in the future.
Totally.
Yeah, that's good.
And that interest
that's good.
just stacks and stacks and stacks.
Yeah.
Time does
Totally.
not heal anything when it comes to relationships. It is just a debt that you're going to have to repay. And I have had that hammered into my head over and over again. And I still make
do
the
it.
mistake.
Yeah, of
and I
course.
still avoid the conversation, the hard
uncomfy.
conversation. But when you just remind yourself of that in the moment and force yourself to have that conversation, you never regret it.
Never.
Also, I love the story you tell yourself. Who was it that said that?
Mark Twain.
No.
Socrates. I think Socrates said it first.
It's the woman, not Esther Perel, the other.
Brene Brown.
Thank you, Brene Brown.
One of those.
As one.
She taught me so. The thing is saying the story I'm telling myself is.
Yeah.
So I talked about this a little bit, but I was having like a body image insecurity moment. We're going to Tulum. I was trying on bathing suits. It's going to be hot. I'm not wearing, a lot of clothing because it's so fucking hot. And I got insecure and I came home and my husband was in the middle of writing his thesis. He's about to get his PhD.
Oh, wow.
So he's like very fucking stressed out. And my daughter is trying to get his attention at the same time. And I think it's a great time to get validation from my husband that I look very sexy in my bikinis. It is not the great time. He's like, yeah, that looks great. And goes back to his thesis. The stories I'm telling myself in my head, my body isn't the same after pregnancy. I'm a mom and I'm not attractive. I need to lose whatever it was. And I stewed on it and I usually wouldn't say anything, right? And that is such a detriment to my partner because those were not the things that he was thinking. And then an hour later, I said, hey, babe, when I tried on those bathing suits and you said I just looked great, but you didn't give me a big reaction, the story I told myself was... And he was like, oh my God, no, I was just literally in writing my science thesis and Lily was really trying to get my attention. You looked beautiful in them. And my husband tells me I look beautiful all the time. But it's like, if I didn't say that in that moment, what a fester that would happen in our relationship. And so I've been trying so
little too. It
so
starts
hard.
so little.
Yes, it starts so little. But when it's about your confidence or it's
Yeah, of
about like
course.
how you feel about yourself, you make mountains out of nothing. And so I'm like, I just have to tell people the story I'm telling myself because that's an easier way to approach confrontation than like, hey, I feel this way in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
brilliant.
I love
Yeah.
that.
I've never heard that as a phrasing, but like from a relationship
It's genius.
tactic standpoint, that's genius.
Genius.
I mean, it just cuts through the entire noise. It's I've always talked about like the helped, heard, hugged thing of like when you're having a challenge, you like with the person's coming to communicate you ask them, do you need to be helped, heard, or hugged? In that moment. And it's like you're trying to deliver comfort in the way that they want it.
Yes.
And my bias is always to be a fixer, and that's a
You are a
terrible
man.
challenge.
You're a man.
Sahil,
And it's a
you are a
terrible
man.
problem in relationships, especially because my wife's love language is touch.
Yeah.
And so really what she always just needed was just to have a hug. At the end of a hard day, confrontation at work, whatever the thing was, she just wanted to be hugged. And she just wanted me to hear, just listen and then give her a hug. And I would be like, well, this, and like,
my God.
staring daggers at me, like wanting to murder me. And rightfully so, by the way, in hindsight, now with my like newfound wisdom, quote unquote, of
what you're talking
I was
about is
doing
like
wrong.
the problem with every heteronormative relationship.
Yeah, totally. But like the idea of like what I heard, like the story I told myself is such a powerful one.
It's taking ownership.
It immediately cuts through the noise. And then he can react to that of like, oh, no, that's absolutely not what it was. And deliver.
And you debunk it.
Yeah.
But you're also
Debunk
not
that
blaming.
story.
You're also not blaming them.
Right.
I'm
It's
also
not creating a fight out of it. That's
I'm
true.
taking like accountability for the stories
That's
I'm
really
telling
true, yeah.
myself versus like me being like, excuse me, why didn't you tell me
that.
I looked beautiful? That's like, because that's a placing blame, right? That's like
exactly.
accusatory. It's accusatory language. Instead, I'm coming to in a vulnerable place and allowing you to see my inner thoughts and what I'm telling myself. It's a complete, like you are taking accountability for the way you perceived that moment.
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely. Okay, hard pivot again, because we just have so much to talk to you about.
great.
You have
Where are
so
you
many
going
ideas.
next?
We're going productivity. Or where do you want to go next?
I want to go relationships real fast.
Okay, you go relationships. Then we'll do productivity.
You have been with your wife since how old?
We first started dating. she had just turned 15 and I was 16.
Did you go all the way through? You've never broken. Okay.
Yeah.
I have somewhat similar-ish.
Yeah.
I met my husband at 14. We dated on and off through high school.
Yeah.
Broke up, and I've been with him since I've been 21. So not high school sweetheart, but from high school.
Yeah.
How?
I mean, not without its struggles.
Like, what's the thing that now, what it's been like 18 years?
Yeah.
It's been 18 years. What's the thing that you keep coming back to in moments of struggle?
Because we've just changed. So, I mean, when you've been together that long, it goes back to the point of life has seasons. Like our relationship has had 4 or 5 different seasons, right?
Yeah.
Like high school, I mean, frankly, I think of like a before and after of me growing up as a human being as the 2 major seasons. And that's a selfish point of view. But when I think of my own life, I'm like pre-30 was like insecure and like someone that I'm not proud of, the things I was chasing, the things I was about. And now like finding myself, realizing what matters to me and the things that matter to me. And hopefully like being on my journey to becoming the type of person that I want to be, the type of father, the type of husband, son, brother, all of those things. And I think about the fact that my wife was willing to crawl through the mud with me through all of those years of me needing to change and needing to live up to my fullest potential of who I could be. And that's not to say that I was like some terrible person. Like, I wasn't like murdering people. You know, I wasn't like doing awful things, right? I was fine from at least from the external world looking around.
But you were also probably her support system too in that journey for her.
Yeah, and we both, I mean, we were kids, right? We started dating, she was 15 years old. You know, like the first time I tried to talk to her, I tried to give her a high five in a computer lab in high school, right? Like that's our founding story, is like her rejecting me when I tried to give her a high five. So it's ridiculous to think at the time I like walk up to you and I'm like, hey, 15 years from now, we're going to be having a kid and like living in a house in New York. It's crazy. But a lot of what made it work for us was we allowed each other to have our own lives all along the way. Yeah. And our relationship never superseded the need for each of us to be our own person. And part of that was forced by the fact that we were long distance for 7 years of that. Because so I was a year ahead of her in school. I got a scholarship to play baseball at Stanford, which was across the country because we grew up in the Boston area. I took that and moved across the country. And we basically decided when I was leaving for college, she was going to be a senior in high school. Like, let's try it. Let's see, because we really care about each other. And, you know, at the time you say, I love you and stuff. You're 17 years old. You don't know what love means yet, but let's try it. And we went, and everyone tells you, oh, you're going to break up at Thanksgiving. That's like Black Friday or whatever in relationships. And we came home and like, we were still really cared about each other. And frankly, like not having to think about a million things outside of baseball and school, like not having to think about meeting, you know, my wife and like meeting girls and all those things. It was like I was able to focus on the things that I really cared about, which at the time was like baseball and school and friendships, building some relationships while I was there. And for her, when she went to school, she went to Parsons School of Design in New York. She was able to really focus on the thing that she really cared about, which was learning that skill and learning, you know, a new trade and really delivering against that. And so while we were long distance, it sort of gave us like the headspace and the space to really build up who we were as individuals while still being, you know, we still talked every single day and we came together probably no more than once a month, just given the distance. But because of that, I think we just were allowed to build our own lives and personalities and relationships that were separate from our togetherness. And, you know, like I saw a lot of friends who went to school with their person that they were in a relationship with, and then eventually it sort of ground on them that they only had a life that was tied to their relationship. They only had friends that were their like couple friends. They only had, you know, things they did together. There was no separate lives. And for us, we always had those separate lives. And so even now, like we allow each other to thrive in our own separate lives. And then we come together and it's like the 1 + 1 = 3.
That's exactly like me and my fiance.
Same.
It's been 8 years and we were together all our 20s. And like, it was like we were both kind of supporting each other through those like turbulent confusion and having those completely separate lives. Like even today, he just got a job that requires him to travel from Tuesday to Thursday every week. People are like, how could you do that?
I told you it's going to be the best thing for your relationship.
Fucking great.
Yeah.
Like, it makes me miss him. It's like, also, what do you think I'm doing? Just sitting around all day, like waiting for him to come home? Like, what the fuck?
Like a puppy at the door.
What? Like, it's ridiculous. So, and honestly, I think that has always been the key for us, is the separate lives. Like, we don't really have any same friends. Like, everything is very separate, but I love it that way. Like, then we come together and it's something so sacred, just us two, rather than it hindering on a ton of other, like, people or relationships. I don't know.
Yeah, we've both been that way with our significant others. I think I'm in a phase where I am actually now more ready to become more integrated with both of our lives. My husband's been getting a PhD for 6 years, and that is a very separate track, right?
In what field?
Bioimmunology, chemistry, you know. Yeah.
I was going to say, I don't even know if you know what it is.
I don't.
I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah, and that requires such a different schedule than mine, and it's been, I'm so proud to support him through that. And now I'm like, I'm ready for us to be a little more on the same, like having the same life-ish, because we've always had our separate things going. But I do think it is so
different seasons
and so important. Yeah, different seasons.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I learned early on, and that I'm really glad I learned early on, is that lack of appreciation is where relationships go to die. And
that's a good one. Especially when you become a parent.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And having a daily ritual of just telling the person one thing that you appreciate about them goes so far to maintaining the health of a relationship. And that goes for romantic relationships as well as friends, as well as parents, siblings. It's just the truth that we naturally default to not vocalizing appreciation. We vocalize frustration. And so the baseline becomes, like things are good, but you don't say anything about it. So you only say something when there's like a drop off that. There's an issue, there's a challenge, there's frustration, whatever. You vocalize that and not the good things. And when that happens, where do you think the relationships go? I mean, it's like, it seems natural if you're only noticing when things are bad. And it's the same thing for your own life, by the way. Like, vocalizing to yourself when you feel good in the morning, when you're excited to do something for work, like, oh, wow, this is cool that I get to record this podcast today. I was just saying to my business partner earlier today, like, this is freaking awesome. Like, if I never accomplish anything else in my life, the fact that I get to go to LA, go meet new people that are fun, like record a conversation, hang out with you, have dinner, and call this work, that's awesome. And if you don't vocalize those things to yourself, that you're like those tiny little things of gratitude, you start to feel really unhappy in your own life too. So it makes sense with a relationship that would be the case.
We always say that if you have a nice thought about someone, just text it to them. Like, it would fucking make their entire day. They'd be like, what?
Goes for strangers too, by the way.
Yes.
And people think it's weird, but like,
I go up to them all the time.
I love your hat.
Yeah.
Just like, you know how many times that person's going to wear that hat in the next month? Like the power you have over someone's life, by the way, is insane. If you compliment someone on an outfit, like you come in and you're like, I love your shirt. They're going to wear that shirt 5 more times, guaranteed, in the next month. And you just did that with one tiny comment. Like, it's crazy, but we hold that power, but we don't use it for good.
Goes back to the ripple.
I like telling couples.
Telling couples?
Like when they're at dinner and I feel like they have like a cute connection and they look in love. Because I think sometimes when you're in a relationship for so long, I just like going up to them and being like, you guys really look like you're happy together. Like, I really think you guys are cute. And I just hope you have a nice evening. Usually they're like, oh my God, wow. And they see each other through new lights. Sometimes they get a little mad at me. Sometimes it doesn't work so well. But when it does work,
it's worth the shot.
It's worth a shot. But
the ones where it doesn't work is just a tax on all the benefit that you're creating.
Exactly.
On the ones that it does work.
I'm like, well, that's a them problem. So
that is a them problem for sure.
Okay. I mean, Sahil, we could talk to you for fucking ever, but I do want to.
You need productivity.
We're not going to get into whole productivity.
We need productivity. We need the male productivity guru to come out. Tell us how to live our lives.
The only reason I ask is because the sisterhood is always asking us for productivity tips, time management, these things. And I think it's also just naturally as humans and as ambitious humans, we are always looking to optimize to be more effective. But I think something that you talk about a lot, which I love, is the productivity paradox, which is something I personally love when you talk about this, because it's basically like we think that if we work longer, that we are accomplishing more. Whereas like, let's say you say, I have 2 hours to complete this task. Like you will fill up those 2 hours. Whereas the task could have probably only taken you an hour. And now you've just wasted time. Where we think that if we're just like putting in the hours, that it then it's going to give us the effect of the results. But I want to hear your perspective on like productivity.
Yeah. I mean, I get more done in 2 hours now than I used to get done in 12 hours.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah.
And that is entirely driven by this idea of Parkinson's law, which just says that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. So it's exactly what you said. If I have 2 hours to do emails, it'll take me 2 hours to do the emails.
Yep.
If I set a 30-minute timer to do the emails, I'll get the emails done in 30 minutes. And that's just the way you work. So if you are going to sit and say like, okay, I have an 8-hour work day and I'm going to work for 8 hours, you're going to take whatever time, you're going to take that 8 hours to do some work. Yeah. If you force yourself to try to get that exact same work done in 2 hours, I can almost guarantee you will find a way to get the work done in 2 hours. That might mean that you develop some shortcuts for some of the things that used to take you longer, which is probably a good thing. And you end up spending the bulk of it on the things that really matter. But forcing yourself to like create constraints around what I would view as like lower value work that you have to do maybe is a really good way to drive productivity up. For me, like phone calls are an example of that. I really hate doing phone calls, mainly because I find them to be energy draining. I just feel dead. What I've done is I just block all of my phone calls into a specific window during the week. So like Thursday afternoons, I know that from 12 to 4 p.m. are going to be back-to-back phone calls, but they're not going to bleed out into any other time during my week. I'm just not going to schedule calls on other days. And doing things like that to your calendar is really effective. Functionally, just to like give you an actual tactic way to figure this out, I do something I called it my energy calendar. Basically, for a week, at the end of every single day, go in and color code your calendar from the day according to whether something was energy creating, you mark it green, energy neutral, like you felt fine after, that's yellow, and then energy draining, like you felt drained after, mark it red. At the end of the week, you can go and look at your calendar and see very clearly what were the things that created energy for you, what were the things that drained energy. And then your whole goal should be, how do I minimize the amount of time spent on energy draining things and maximize the amount of time spent on energy creating things in my life? How can I like batch and block those energy draining things into specific windows? And how can I amplify the things that are creating a ton of energy in my life? And the rationale is, if you can do that, you will start to fulfill your higher potential as, a professional in whatever areas you're focusing on. You'll start naturally working on the things that have higher leverage, that are driving greater outcomes, higher rewards in your life, whether they're personal or professional. And you'll start eliminating the things that are creating misery in your life. And for me, like phone calls was an example of that, but it could be anything. Like emails drive a lot of misery for me. So I need to figure out how to batch emails. I still have to do emails. I can't just not do them. But if I focus them into like a 30-minute block where I'm also listening to awesome music that I love while I do it or something, it makes it a little bit less miserable along the way.
Got it. Something that I fall into is I'm so conditioned of the 9 to 5, 8-hour block. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I get so much shame if I'm not like at my desk during that time. And it's like, who the fuck is carrying and this is also something you talked about, the spotlight effect. Like, it feels like people know that I'm not working at this exact time. And it's like, how the fuck do I get over that ingrained? I guess it's more just like a release of this limiting belief that like I have to be chained to my desk from these hours. But like I know myself, I'm really good in the morning. So like I wake up at like 5 a.m. and I'll do work from like 5 to 9. But like, I don't want to be chained by the number of hours I'm working. Like, I want to see it as quality rather than the quantity.
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, it's like it's releasing yourself from the feeling that the amount of input is what matters.
Yes.
What matters is the amount of output that you can create. And that means that what you should really care about is the amount of output per unit of input. So in a normal world and in like the, industrial 9 to 5 assembly line that most of us think about when we think about work, everything is one-to-one. You're like, okay, I do 1 unit of input and that creates 1 unit of output. And so if I want to create 10 units of output, I got to work 10 units of input.
Yes.
What you actually want to do is figure out how can I do 1 unit of input and create 10 units of output. And then I can decide, do I want to just work for the 1 unit of input and like have that same output? Great. And then I can go hang out with my family and live my great life. Or am I like feeling crazy charged up and I'm going to do 10 units of input and it's going to be 100 units of output and go change the world and do whatever it is. But the point is that dislocating inputs and outputs is what allows you to make that decision.
Absolutely.
It's what allows you to choose. That only happens by identifying the highest leverage things that you can be working on.
Yeah.
Because if you're working on, you know, some stupid thing that you could easily delegate, hire someone to do, hire someone to manage, you're always going to be stuck in that one-to-one. It's only by figuring out what are those like higher leverage tasks where I'm the only person in the world or in my business that can do this thing. Yeah. And if I spent, rather than only like having this be 1% of my time, what if that thing was 100% of my time? How big would this business get? If all I focus, I mean, with my newsletter is a perfect example. Once I realized that every hour of my time spent on like ops and like growth things and marketing funnels, every hour of my time spent on those things was hurting the ultimate goal of the newsletter reaching 1 billion people over the next 50 years of my life. All that I was really good at was writing the newsletter and thinking about the problems. And so I should be spending 100% of my time on that because that's the highest leverage thing for me. I can find someone who really excels at the things that I suck at. And then for them, they might have like that 1 to 10 relationship with the stuff where it's 1-to-1 for me.
Yeah.
And so then like you can create a cool map within your own company. If you're running a business, startup, whatever, where you're working on the things that are high leverage for you, you're delegating things that aren't. And for the person you're delegating it to, it's high leverage for them.
Yeah.
You like find yourself in this kind of like perfect happy medium.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this in the car.
Yeah.
Have you read the book? I haven't, but someone told me the premise, so I'm going to read it soon.
I like that.
10x your life.
Is that Grant Cardone?
No, it's, I don't know who, but they
He's
say
the big
it's
10x. Isn't he like the 10x guy? I always thought Grant Cardone was like the 10x guy.
Yeah,
but anyway.
yeah, you might be correct. But
I mean,
this
they might
book
have just.
isn't.
Yeah, I'm
this
sure
book's
he
not
sued
written
them
by
for
him. I
this.
don't think. Yeah, so that probably tracks.
Yeah.
It says that it's easier to 10x your life than 2x your life because 2x your life means you're just working twice as hard. 10x is doing the one input.
I didn't know this was a book. I read like an article or an essay on it once, and it's very good. It's super true.
Yeah, I'm trying to 10x my life right now.
Yeah. And it's the cool thing about that idea is that it applies to every single thing you look at in your life. So once you like hear the framework, you probably don't even need to read the book.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think
you could probably read like a short essay on it to just get the idea that it's often much harder to 2x. Like it's harder to think about what are like the little incremental steps I can take from here to the next level than it is to figure out like, I mean, thinking about it in my own life, I'm like, okay, if my newsletter is currently reaching 1 million people and you're like, okay, well, how do I get it to 2 million? Well, I have to write hundreds of newsletters. You know, there's like 1 million things that need to happen. What would I have to do to get it to 10 million in that same time period? That is going to unlock an entirely different set of solutions that you're going to have to come up with because the things that will get you to 2, it's not the same. It has to be some like massive asymmetric thing. Like I need to get on Good Morning America and talk about my newsletter, and then it needs to get picked up by Ellen DeGeneres. You know, like it's asymmetric. And so then you can think about, okay, well, how do I do that? Like what is the path? How would I end up actually acting on those things? It just unlocks you to create or think way more creatively about solutions in your life.
Asking better questions.
Yeah, asking better questions. Back to that. Yeah, totally.
Okay, what are just to close out, I want to do like very tactical things and habits or practices people can implement literally tomorrow.
What's it called? The fire thing?
Rapid fire?
Yeah, rapid fire.
Just one.
The fire thing.
One rapid fire question. So I know you talk about grayscale on your phone. You talk about digital free, walks and things like that. What are some of those little things that people like tomorrow can start doing?
Ooh, okay. I'll give you a couple.
Okay.
I suck at journaling. Journaling has been one that I've like never been able to get myself to do until I started doing something that I call the 1-1-1 method. So every single day at the end of the day, take out a journal and write down one win from the day, 1 point of stress, anxiety, or tension, something that's stressing you out, and then 1 point of gratitude, something you feel grateful for. It takes literally like 2 to 5 minutes to do this. And it is the best way that I've ever found to start like building that muscle of reflection at the end of the day, because it forces you to recognize a good thing. So to the point of appreciation, you recognize something that you did. And that can be as small as I got up at the time that I said I was going to. I did the like 15-minute workout when I felt like crap. I, went on a great date with someone. Whatever that tiny win is, you write it down. Whatever the stress is, you get it off your mind and you write it down on the piece of paper. There's always something that you're like stressing about, and then you're sitting in bed. If you're like me, you're like sitting in bed and you can't sleep because it's just on your head. Writing it down is undefeated for being able to get it off your brain.
Yeah.
And then the point of gratitude. It's like something that you just felt grateful for, whatever it was, like that, the sounds or the smells outside in the spring or in the summer, the weather was warm, whatever that thing was. It just makes you feel incredible to finish the day. And it's like 2 to 5 minutes. Anyone can do it. No one can claim that they don't have time. And it gets you to start building that habit and that journaling practice that I think is so powerful for everyone's mental health. So that's one method. Another one that I've recently implemented that has been hugely helpful for me is like a 15-minute walk after lunch.
Yes.
I got to start doing that.
We got to do that.
I'm like the worst post-lunch lull, drowsy.
Same.
And I don't take naps, but like miserable post-lunch.
Same.
And
I didn't eat actually that much because of this interview, because I knew that if I actually ate a lunch,
we would be tired.
I'd be tired.
Yeah.
So I minimally ate.
Yeah. The walk completely cured it for me.
Wow.
So like eat lunch and then literally like as soon as you're done, like, drink your water or whatever and just go out for 10, 15 minutes walking, ideally with no phone, like no stimulus, just go out for a walk. And it's completely changed my life. I'm like, I come back and I'm like ready to rock whatever it is that I'm working on, whatever I'm focused on. It actually scientifically does help. It drives like digestive systems. You feel much better. Your energy, it gets sparked. So there's a reason scientifically that it works. Yeah. But it's so easy just as an actual action to just say like, oh, I'm going to go walk as soon as you get done.
That's a good one.
Another one that I love is schedule 25-minute meetings instead of 30-minute meetings and give yourself 5 minutes to reset in between things.
Yes.
There's something called attention residue, which is like the idea that there's like a cognitive switching cost to moving between things. And so like when you're in your next meeting, you're still thinking about the prior one and then you're thinking about the next one before the end of this one. And all of those tiny little switching things have basically the effect of creating a lag on your ability to be focused on the one at hand. And so just creating a tiny bit of separation reduces stress scientifically, and just allows you to actually be present and listen in any given moment or any given meeting.
That's a good one.
Damn.
I'm going to do all 3 of those.
All pretty easy to do and
So
implement.
easy.
Those are good.
You can start tomorrow. So
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to do the walk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We ask every woman who comes on OK Sister podcast this.
But we're going to ask.
We're going to ask you as the first male
Did
guest.
I break the dam? Like, are you gonna? How did you
I
feel
think
about
so.
this? Do you
I
feel like
think
it?
so.
Is this gonna be an
Honestly.
only male guest podcast now? Like, are we like, damn, we're gonna
Okay for other podcasts.
You opened the floodgates.
All right.
I this was perfect. I'm like, who
Yes.
else can we have
Yeah.
on? Because
Yeah.
we've been interviewing people for 6 years. There's not that many more people we want to interview.
Yeah. Well, now you're totally opened up. That's true.
Yes.
Hopefully, you don't get like a terrible second experience and just
gosh.
like retrench. Yeah, you
No,
gotta
no,
go
no.
back
They
6
go
more years of
through-
only women.
They go through a big vetting process.
It's like a
if another
sabbatical.
one.
You have like your 1 year now where you can do all men, and then you can go back. Yeah, it's great.
It's a new season.
Yeah.
If you could brag about one thing and you weren't allowed to be humble, what would you brag about?
I think I'm a great dad. I'm really proud of the relationship I'm building with my son. And mostly I'm really proud of how safe and comfortable he feels around me. And like how safe and comfortable he feels to be silly and crazy and play. When I see that and when I see videos of it and reflect on, like, it fills me with joy to get to see that. And it's a result of really caring about it and the actions that I'm taking on a daily basis. So I am really proud of that.
That's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Yeah. I feel like this is an age where we're seeing incredible dads step up. I think that this is the generation that men like you, including my husband, are really taking a conscious and intentional approach to parenthood And it's really beautiful to see. And the world, talk about a ripple effect. That will be your greatest ripple effect for sure.
I hope so. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Will you let everyone know where they can find you and sign up for your newsletter?
Yeah. So everything is at sahilbloom.com. One of the benefits of having a weird name is that you can get the domain. So sahilbloom.com, and my newsletter's there. And, on social media, I have at Sahil Bloom, again, weird name benefit, on all of the, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere.
Beautiful.
Amazing.
Yeah. We love it. And you can follow us at OK Sister Pod. We love you, sisters.
Bye.
How do we do?
We did it.
Dude, okay.
How long was that?
Needs to
Okay.
turn on.
Oh, yeah, it was warm.
Hour
Sorry,
10.
we went a little long.
No, it was great.
We
Great.
knew we might
Yeah.
hit a little bit.
It went by
Thank
fast.
you so much. I
This
forgot
was
to
awesome.
comment on your black notebook that you carry around.
Oh, yeah. I love. Well, I had to write down a couple things that you hit me with here. I
Oh,
love this
yay.
story. I told myself.
Okay, sister,
and then
got into the black notebook.